actually asked Ada to help me with everything that involved my wedding, from helping my wedding dress to planning a bachelorette party to doing the toast at my wedding, and she did everything with a smile. She never once said no. And for her wedding, all she asked me to do was to shut up and do this toast. Even though I asked her 1,000 times, I asked Nelson if they needed help, and they never asked me once. So Ada is the kind of person who will do anything a friend will ask of her, but will ask for so little in return. So that's the first thing. The second is that she is so amazingly accomplished and is so humble about all of it. And I distinctly remember, I'm not stopping. I distinctly remember I went over to her parents' house for holiday dinner, and I was looking at the bookshelf in her living room with a bunch of trophies and awards that were gathering dust. And I assumed it was like the shelf that's in my parents' basement, you know, volleyball, 7th grade, trying to play and instead bruising my arms to get some trophies to make me feel better about myself. So I walked closer to this bookshelf, and I realized they were Female Athlete of the Year awards, all 3 years that she played college basketball. Yeah, and so I looked over at her. We were a couple years out of college at that time, and I looked over at her and I was like, what? This is a big deal. You never told me about this. And she just looks at me and smiles and shrugs her shoulders, kind of like she's doing now. And that's just Ada. She, despite all of her many accomplishments, she will never brag about any of it. So I hope you will join me in making it your life's mission to brag about Ada on her behalf. So obviously I think Ada is wonderful. And I have to admit that for a while I was like, gosh, is there really a guy who's going to come along and be worthy of my cousin, right? And that's when I met Nelson. And I remember the first time that Ada told me about Nelson. I asked her, the first thing I asked her when she talked about any guy was, does he play basketball? And she said no. You all probably know this. But then she went on to talk about all the things that she liked about him. And this is very Ada. That he grew up in Hong Kong and he speaks Cantonese better than she does. That he plays piano better than she does. He can play any song on command, including Whitney Houston. We tested this. That he's super smart and financially savvy. And I've actually never heard Ada gush about anything or anyone. And so this is probably the closest it's ever come to her gushing about anyone. And so that's when I first had the inkling that maybe this could be the guy. And when I met Nelson, I learned he was all of those things and more. What's important to me was that he totally complimented Ada and his laid-back and mellow style. And most importantly, he is so madly in love with this woman. So when Ada did the toast at my wedding, my mother, like any good aunt would do, was staring at Nelson. And she told me afterwards that the entire time, Nelson was staring at Ada in this loving, starstruck way. And so I have had the pleasure and the honor of getting to know the two of you over the last couple of years, from dating to buying a house together to getting engaged to today. And Nelson, I can really not think of anyone who's more worthy of my cousin than you. So, will everyone please join me in raising your glass to celebrate this wonderful couple, Ada and Nelson.
Beautifully said. Once again, let's give a big round of applause once again to our lovely matron of honor as well as our best man.